We want to get as many New Yorkers tested as possible. As you know, many need it for their jobs, for their day-to-day lives. My daughter, when she has to go to school, we have to get tested on a regular basis. And so it is important that we get at-home tests to people. We are continuing to open up more testing sites all over the state, working with municipal governments. So we feel good about that. On the vaccination front, as you might have heard today, Governor Hochul announced that all healthcare workers must get booster shots in the next 2 weeks. Why is that so important? We are finding that, people who are vaccinated and boosted, the chances of them getting COVID are significantly less. The chances of them being hospitalized, significantly less, 14 times less likely to be hospitalized if you have the vaccinations, 7 times less likely to die. I mean, these are real numbers. We have some weapons to help us with this crisis. We want to use it. We want to get people tested, and we also want to bring more staff. Our healthcare workers have been doing a Herculean job. Many of them need to get bonuses. The governor just put $10 billion in her state of the state to get people bonuses, hire more staff, so we can have hospital workers across the state so that we can deal with the demand that is coming.
Yeah, you mentioned that about the hospital workers, and I know that we've covered multiple stories where there are some hospital workers who just don't want to get the vaccine or the booster.
Well, first of all, we want to increase their pay, and we want to give people bonuses so that they can get rewarded for the work that they do, the valiant efforts they're taking to keep us safe during this time. But it is without question important to note that the healthcare workers are our front lines in this defense. They are the ones who are most coming into contact with people who have COVID. We need to make sure that they are most protected in that fight. Also, we are keeping a very close eye on hospital capacity. The Department of Health, through our Surgeon Flex plan, is making sure regionally that hospitals have the bed capacity, staff capacity they need, so that no one is in a situation where they can't get the services that they require. Hospitals that reach, that 10% mark in terms of capacity issues. We are requiring that they do not perform selective elective surgeries. Mm-hmm. So we're doing all the things that we need to do to make sure that our system still works, because this is a crisis and we want to treat it as such, but we also want to keep the economy open. We also want to keep our kids in school. We also want our small business to survive. We're trying to do both at the same time. And in order for that to happen, everyone has to play their part.
Yeah, you mentioned the economy, which was a big portion of the governor's State of the State address. She proposed $1 billion in property tax rebates. She wants to phase in some middle class tax cuts and some tax breaks for small businesses. How will she plan to pay for all that?
Well, the good news is that we are working on that right now. And so, as you know, we will have our budget proposal in a few weeks. And in that executive budget, you will see how we do that. But there's no doubt our small businesses have been on the front lines in this fight against COVID. They have been most impacted. We're trying to give them the resources that they need. Our middle class Americans, just everyday Americans, trying to make sure that they get an acceleration on those tax cuts, property tax rebates for all, for some of our folks who own homes, some of whom have renters who might have not been able to pay rent. So we want to make sure that the bedrock of our country, the bedrock of our state, which are these people, get the support they need so that they can turn the corner as we get through COVID.
Bail reform and adjusting that law. What are you seeing or what are you hearing? Will that be something that this legislative session might take up?
Well, one of the things that I'm hearing across the board is that we want to make sure that we keep all New Yorkers safe. And sometimes when you talk about various bills that have happened in the past, there are issues that could get conflated that aren't necessarily tied to what is the core issue of public safety. And so one of the things we're trying to do is, we're going to keep talking. Obviously, the session just started, so we're going to be talking with legislative leaders around previous bills across the board, and see what might or might not need to be done with any of those. But secondly, the governor has been saying, listen, let's invest, right? Let's make sure that we provide the resources to our law enforcement so that they can trace some of these ghost guns and trace some of these items that are helping to spike gun violence. Let's deal with that. Let's also make sure we're investing in community-based intervention groups that help to provide kids with jobs, skills training, all the things that they need so that we can reduce the amount of people who could be caught up in the criminal justice system. We have the Jails to Jobs program where people who are coming out of jail, that we're making sure that they're getting access to folks who can help them with the resumes and finding opportunities. I actually believe, and so does the governor, that parole officers should have that as a part of their mandate, which is being more of a sort of an HR, human resources effort to try to help that transition. We got to think differently about how we try to grow out of some of our problems on the criminal justice side. And I think it's going to be intervention for sure. And so we have to make sure that we have the right laws in place, but it's also investing in communities that deal with poverty and a number of issues in the right way so that we can try to reduce some of the issues.
That's some great points there. I know another big thing I think that a lot of people were kind of surprised about was the 2-term limits for elected officials. The governor has made it her mission to bring more transparency to state government, which is important, and also just greater trust. I know there is that divide that we see from downstate to upstate. With this 2-term, what are you hearing from lawmakers when it comes to applying 2-term limits to some of elected officials, and of course the banning their outside income?
Sure. First of all, I think, when the governor says that the governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, and the state comptroller, who are the highest elected officials in the state, that we should have a 2-term limit, I agree with her entirely. A ban on outside income, agreed entirely. I mean, we are the leaders of the state, and everyone and the 20 million New Yorkers need to know that we are completely focused on them and them alone and their best interest. I also think it's also great to have a governor who thinks about accountability in this kind of way and says, listen, I don't need to be here forever, right? The federal system works just fine. There's no reason why we can't employ that. And I know there's some who are thinking that this is the first step to legislative sort of term limits. I think the governor's point is, listen, let's focus on this. They're in the legislative chamber. There are benefits of people who have historical experience and can bring that to the table in a serious way. But the executive chamber, the executives of the state have a lot of power. And you don't want a situation where that almost starts to feel like it's never going to end. And so I agree with her entirely, and I love her vision.